Goodness to you. And I say goodness because I don't know if it's morning, noon, or evening that you're enjoying this broadcast, but it's all good. I'm Sporty King, and welcome to Gift Friday. I created it because so often we hear people say TGIF, thank God it's Friday. But I say, what allure does Friday have to that person that took their last breath on Thursday? Or any day before that, for all that matters. So I use what I've learned through Psalm 92 and 2. And that is, it is good to proclaim your unfailing love in the morning, your faithfulness in the evening. In other words, I think it's important, instead of saying TGIF, I use TGIT. Thank God it's today. And then TGIT. Thank God it's tonight. And that's a lesson that is reinforced by what I learned through Matthew 6 and 34. And that is, so don't worry about for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. So consider another way of looking at TGIF, and that is thanking God is free. It's free. Think about what it costs you to experience the first gift of every day. The gift of waking up doesn't cost you a dime. And then that still moves us into realizing that when we take the T in TGIF and move it from the front to the end, we get GIFT. And that's what we should really be giving God thanks for, is today. So GIFT, God is for today, is an online sharing where I read one of my original poems, and it gives you the opportunity to be inspired by it or to use it to inspire someone in your life. What I then do is drop it in the thread, as well as it's on my site with connected to the link, so that you can download your colorful PDF keepsake copy and have yourself a nice library of inspiration to keep you going. So here I'll read the poem and then I'll share it so it becomes your gift. Now today I've chosen a poem that speaks to a choice that speaks to what I spoke about on my Glue Wednesday broadcast this week. And that is, you are carefully being chosen as a messenger. And this week's poem is from my book, I Found Out I'm Living, an affirmation of life. A book about the fact that when we affirm our spirituality, we truly find out that we are much more alive than we think we are. And the poem title is Necessary by Every Means Possible. Now, one reason that I chose to read this poem is because so many of us are familiar with the Malcolm X quote, by any means necessary. Malcolm X was an African American leader in the civil rights movement, minister, and supporter of Black nationalism. He urged his fellow Black Americans to protect themselves against white aggression by any means necessary, a stance that often put him at odds with the nonviolent teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Yet the quote became the title of a painting, his autobiography, and is still being used around the world. It's still being used around the world to challenge oppression and exploitation, encouraging people to organize and take action to gain their rights, respect, and freedom. Just a week before his assassination in 1965, Malcolm X stated, "We are today seeing a global rebellion of the oppressed against the oppressor, the exploited against the exploiter." Doesn't sound very 1965 to me. But this past Wednesday, May 19th, would have been his 96th birthday. So that's why I chose to share this. And I wrote this poem through the eyes. I wrote this poem through the eyes of a group of teenagers at an alternative high school in Chicago back in 1995. Alternative high schools serve students that are pushed out or drop out of traditional schools. Many of these students just don't fit into the straight and narrow of high school. And by the way, right now I'm reading as the poem is introduced in the book, because that's what I do in my books of poetry, is I try to introduce my reason for writing a poem so that people have a better chance of understanding where the poem is coming from, kind of puts you in the right mood and state of mind. But many of these students just don't fit into the straight and narrow of high school. They may have no family support, maybe financially assisting their families, or wards of the state, or from orphanages, or spoiled little rich kids. It's not always, it's not always bad kids. Many are 19 to 21 years old and could easily pass the GED, but are simply rebellious teens that decide that they do want a high school education. The students were asked to call out words that came to their minds as we discussed the topic of the day. What's important for you is to feel in this poem the parallel between the thought process with them versus what's in your heart. So, what message do you send to the young and all people in your circle? And this poem is called Necessary by Every Means Possible. A slave mentality is hereditary. Oh, yes. If my mother reminds me that I'm going to be just like my no good father because a black man wants a white woman when he gets the money, she reminds herself that she's not good enough to be a queen or equal to a white woman, and feeds her angry spirit that repels my attraction and makes her less of a prize, while reminding my sister to lower her expectations of her son's father, unless she's light-skinned. Oh, yes. If my father reminds me to avoid the trap he fell into because a black woman ain't never going to be satisfied, he reminds himself that he's not fit to support a family or be the king of his castle, and feeds my need to define my manhood based on the number of women that I can service, reminding my sister to be sure she gets paid because brown sugar is as sweet as it gets. So don't let a male call himself a man if he can't afford to be her daughter's father, especially one of them high yellow boys. And as he, the father, lives down to her, the mother's expectation, while she, the mother, keeps up to his, the father's, negative image, their son and daughter misinterpret the definition of what a man or woman is and unconsciously continue the cycle while vowing not to be like their parents. When we let go of the past, we can live in the present and create images that allow our children to recognize the difference between personal choice and foregone conclusion. Let X mark the spot from which you'll live your life. A slave mentality is hereditary. It's necessary that you pass that fact on by every means possible. What a great poem to talk about self-respect, self-esteem, trust. Those are just a few components of living our lives. See, you have to live your life in the present and recognize that what you share from the past will impact those in your circle. In my Glue Wednesday broadcast, I asked, what have you learned today based on what you learned yesterday in terms of what you'll do tomorrow to celebrate God's gift of breath? Remember that TGIT or the TGIF, trusting God is free. Your free breath of today. What have you learned that you can pass on? Because it's in your celebration that the message becomes exchanged. And for you to know how to choose your messengers carefully, you have to first feel what it's like to be chosen as a messenger. And remember that you are carefully being chosen as a messenger. You are somebody's messenger. It won't always seem like you're headed in the right direction. So you have to embrace the decisions that you make. The decisions that you've made. You have to recognize that they've impacted many who you can't see. And you see, it's necessary that you pass that fact along by every means possible. You have carefully been chosen as someone's messenger. Thank you for checking out my broadcast or my channel. Please be sure to subscribe and comment. Your comments could spark my inspiration for the next message. Take the time to check out my sportyking.com if you're not watching this on the site, and enjoy my monthly fun letter. Get on that, get on my mailing list to receive it, as well as my inspirational products. I got my new product up there called Passing Thoughts, which is my way to extend the power of words and the legacy that we leave behind. So check that out as well, and be happy to get your set and use it to bring brightness in your life. But you are somebody's messenger. Thank you for enjoying my message and allowing me to be one of your many messengers. Thanks. God bless you. And thank God it's today. Ciao.